So welcome to chapter 2. We're going to start going through the user interface of Unity. We're going to go into all the different bits and pieces that might be useful to you when you're creating your own theatre productions in Unity. So we're going to start off by just loading up a new project. Now, there's several ways to do this. You can click on this little arrow, choose a version you want to install to. If you've only got one version installed, it doesn't make a difference. Just click New. Now, just to stress, I've got a really wide monitor, so I'm trying to work off one side. If you're wondering why I'm looking over to the right, it's because I've got other things going on. So when you go to install Unity when you go to install a new project for the first time, it gives you options, lots of options that you might want to try from. And depending on the version of Unity you're using, there may be more than I'm showing you right now. The most important thing is to choose one of these versions here. Okay, I'll just explain what all of these are. First of all, you've got 2D. 2D is if you're working on something like a user interface or an app where there's no 3D content. It's all just sitting on a user interface, or like a plane with text and images, but no 3D content. That may come up. You maybe wanted to build just a straightforward app. It's not the most efficient tool for building apps in Unity. Apps without 3D content, that is. It's designed for making computer games, but you can, if this is the only tool build an app that's, buttons and text and stuff. Like, for instance, if you want to build a website on an app. 3D is the traditional, long-term version of content creation in Unity. It looks quite nice. It renders lights in real time, as you'd expect. But about 4 or 5 years ago, when Unreal was starting to really emerge as a market leader and it just looked so beautiful, they went, right, we need something else here. So they created 2 new versions of their 3D version. So they got Universal Render Pipeline and High Definition Render Pipeline. They really think that Universal Render Pipeline is now the go-to. This is what they think is what everyone should be using. So they're trying to encourage everyone to use this as a default because it's basically the same as 3D, but it's just a much better quality. So it renders lighting more nicely. It uses better quality materials. As a result, it does use a lot more processing power, but not anywhere near as much as High Definition Render Pipeline, which is a ultra, stack it up, really high graphics card quality settings. So I have used that on some projects, but you will be limited to what you can deploy it onto. It can run on mobile, but like a really good quality mobile. And actually, the things we're going to be doing, the quality is not really going to come across. There are a few pipeline changes that we would need to look at, which we're going to address anyway as part of Universal Render Pipeline. Essentially, there's a different material management system that applies to both of these two. And sometimes you'll import 3D models that haven't been updated. This is Unity models that have already been made in another program. They'll need to be updated into the Universal Render Pipeline format. And it's exactly the same process depending on which one you go to. If you want to try it, there's some other things. There's an AR template. There's a mobile template which optimizes everything for you out of the box. A VR template which has all the VR tools already built in. There's still loads of stuff to do. Like the learning curve on those is still huge if you want to build VR and AR apps. And we'll get to that at some point. But the focus at the moment is just straightforward 3D. And if you're just don't know what you're going to do, or you don't know where your project's going to go in the future, just URP, Universal Render Pipeline, good place to start. Project name and location, right? So project name is really helpful to get this right first off. So we're going to call this, I've got a funny little character in there, Unity Training. Now I can't type. Now I write everything in what we call camel hump lettering. I think that's what you call it, where you don't put spaces in. Now this is just a good habit to get into, and I'll explain why later in the course. But it's just a good game practice that you use. Now this has gone to my the last location that I created, which was a project we were doing a bit of R&D for a Peter Pan production. So what I do is on my D drive, I just have a folder I called Unity or Unity Tests. So I'm going to put everything in here. I'm going to create a new folder called Unity Training. Again, I haven't done any spaces. Select that folder. It will create another folder inside it. So if we end up creating another Unity Training project, it will go in there. But so the project name that you've just created, it will occur as a new folder, and the tree will sit underneath that. So I just find that quite useful. I don't put it on my C drive because I end up creating so many projects and they get so large. My C drive gets filled up really quickly. It'd probably be a little more efficient to run on the C drive, but the D drive is fine. I do all my projects on the D drive. It's a slightly slower disk, but Unreal's much worse than Unity. Unreal projects get huge. They start off about 12 gigabytes and then they go up and up from there. Unity, they start quite small. You might have one that's only 500 megabytes, but I've got one project that's 80 gigabytes, and it takes a really long time to load up because it's trying to cache all that information out of the D drive. So it's choose for yourself. If you've got a really big C drive and it's a fast disk, you're doing just one project, maybe start with that, and then you click create. And now we wait. So what you can't see probably is my everything gone to the centre of my screen now. So drag it over for you. Okay, and that's loaded up. If it took a lot longer for you than it did for me, that's quite understandable because I'd cut the video. So when Unity first loads up, this is how it looks. Now, because we've gone into URP mode, it gives you a bit of information, it gives you some example assets. You can kind of see what's going on. Now, this may not be the layout that you're seeing. It may be that I've got a layout on here that's standard. If you click up here in layout, you can click on default, and it will adjust everything to what it considers to be the default layout. So let's just do that to start with to make sure that we're all looking at the same thing. Now, so just to reiterate, if you missed that, up here, default. Okay, that's your layout. There's different views. You can change that later on depending on what you like. Now there's, let's take you through everything. Okay, so first of all, we've got, how are we doing this? We've got a few different sections to talk through all these elements later, so I won't go through all in detail. But in here we've got our scene view. This is your 3D view. This is where you work on your content. You can come in here, you can click on things. Middle mouse click to drag around. Alt, middle mouse click, does exactly the same thing. If you alt and left mouse click, you can rotate. Obviously left mouse click to select things, and if you hold down right mouse button, you can rotate. But you see something's happened now. I've got 3 little keyboard symbols come up which weren't there before. So alt gives me this eye, and if I hold down right mouse click, I get alt and these little keyboards. Now if you play games, you'll know that it's quite common to use the WASD keys to move yourself around. Well, that's what this does. You hold down the right mouse button and you can start to use your keyboard to move yourself around. So Q and E to go up and down, and then you can move yourself in and out with your keys. Now this is quite handy. I like this way of moving around because you can really get in and out of the scene view, get nice and close. But you can do it by moving around with the middle mouse click, alt and left mouse click to spin around. Yeah, up to you which one you do. But if you see me whizzing around, I'll be using my keys to move around because that's just how I like to do it, because I'm a bit of a gamer and I know that way of working. You'll also see up here another tab called Game. Game is different from Scene. Game is what's actually going to be playing in your game. So if you're making a computer game, this is what will be seen in the app on the console. Now it's quite handy to see these things side by side sometimes. So I'll show you what I do, which is probably what you saw when I loaded it up. If I'm in my scene view, I'll click and drag the game, and I could dock this anywhere I want. So I could stick it down here, and there's my game view. I could stick it over here, have it sort of side by side. I can move the window over depending which one I want to see. So you can do this for a lot of your stuff. You can start to really customize your UI to give you lots of different space. And when you're happy with it, you go in there and just create your own layout, and that could be your layout. I like the default one because I watch a lot of YouTube videos where I'm trying to teach myself everything about YouTube, about Unity, just as you are. So I like to leave my scene fairly consistent with the default, because then it's familiar when I'm watching YouTube videos. I may also just drag this out entirely, and I can undock it as a free framing window, and you can't see this. I'm going to drag it off, but I can put it on another screen so I can see it separately. What you can also do is down here it says display 1, display 2. You can have up to 8 of these, all showing different cameras. So you can actually have 8 separate displays if you've got that many screens connected, all of them showing different camera views. So it's really powerful. This is something that Unreal makes incredibly difficult. They have to have a whole degree in some sort of system to be able to operate. But here in Unity, it's really easy to have multiple displays. So I'm going to dock that back up there because we're not going to be using game mode for the moment. The point of game mode, I mean, you can see the quality is almost exactly the same. There's not much difference visually between game mode and scene mode. The real difference is that a lot of features don't turn on until you hit the play button. The play button is up here. This is where you actually turn on your game to run it. Now, until then, you've got this beautiful scene, all the details are there, but it doesn't activate any code or any scripts. So you will need to you need to hit play to activate all those. So things like smoke, for instance, won't start playing necessarily. A lot of features like audio features, or any code we build basically won't work until you hit play. So we're going to be working in scene because we're going to start off this tutorial by creating the look of the scene and putting in assets and things. So we're fine to start off here. Now all of the objects that we see, you can see here in what we call the hierarchy pane or panel. And if I want to click on, like, say, the drywall, you see it highlights it there for me. Equally, if I click on the drywall in the scene, it highlights it here for me. Actually, what it does, first of all, the first time you click on it, it clicks on the entire group, and then you click on it again, and it will go down into the sub-level of that. So you just keep clicking on something until you find the object you want. There you go, so I found my hat. Got that group of objects there, the props, and then in benches. I'll come to this later. Later on I'll explain why this is blue, and I'll explain how we group things and nest things and what parenting and children are. But just for now, just know this is where all of the objects in your scene live. And when we get onto importing and building your scene, we'll talk about how you can move objects between both the hierarchy panel and the 3D scene. Now, if I do click on something here, I get a change in the inspector, and the inspector is like your details, the details for that object. You can click on anything. You can click on it in the scene. It might be that you're clicking on it in this project browser down here, which I'll talk about in a sec. The point is, anything you click on, it will produce information, contextual information about that object in this scene. So if I've clicked on this group, I've got the workshop set, which is a whole collection of things. It's just given me one set of components, which is the transform, so that's its position. So I can sort of drag things around here by clicking on this X and move it around, or I can type in, -2. I'll talk about units a bit later. I can scale it. So that's doing it across everything. And there's more components we can add to this, which I'll talk about a lot later on. Let's go into a bit more detail. Let's just click on the drywall. You see we've got more information here. There's a mesh information. Now that's a component that generates the actual mesh. There's a component there that renders that mesh, and then there's a material library down here as well. So this is where the materials for that object are. And again, I'm going to talk about this all later. I'm just showing you where everything is at the moment. I can click on my camera. My camera has different information. So I've got the type of field of view we've got and the depth of field that we'll be getting it. So all of that sort of stuff is all contained in here as well. And the transform component is fairly common. We see that in most objects because nearly everything has to have a place in the scene. So you'll pretty much always see the transform. See, that's always sitting at the top there. So that's the inspector window, and we'll be using that a lot. So don't lose that. And then down here we've got the project window. And the project window is where all your assets are. It takes a little while to explain the project window, so I'm actually going to do a section of it later. But just so you understand that this is not something that lives within the Unity editor. This is actually looking at your Windows Explorer folder. So if you've got actual assets sitting on your C drive or your D drive, they will be in here, and it's always up to date. So this is actually my my C drive's contents, but everything here has data that is relevant to Unity. So we can see little thumbnails of the pictures and everything. It's all built in Unity, but it stores it on the C drive. So if you needed to, you could right click on this, show in Explorer, and then if I just drag this over, you'll see I'm looking at exactly the same content, exactly the same folder structure, and it's live. And it's very important that you understand that's live, because if you accidentally delete something out of your folder, it will delete it out of your projects. And if you delete it out of the project, it'll delete it out of the folder, and vice versa. Equally, if you just try to move objects in and dump them in this folder, it's a bit like dumping them in this window here, and it will do a lot of caching. And if you put a load of information in, it has to do a whole update to understand and learn what those objects are and put them in the right place. So just be aware of that. You can get to all the folders here. So you've got the same folder structure under assets. So assets is what we see here. You've also got packages. I'm going to come to packages later, very soon. This is basically like inside the project, but it's core information to Unity. It's what makes Unity run. So you don't want to be in packages as much as possible. You might have to look at it to find like an example asset or something, but you shouldn't be doing anything inside the packages folder. Stay inside assets, and you've got information here. Now this folder structure, if you want to see it with more detail, you can scale up by using this little slider at the bottom here, or we can scale it right down. making a list. I quite like this view. When you get lots and lots of folders, it starts getting busy. So you can then see everything in assets mode, and you click on the whatever it's called, the toolbar up top here to change the position of the folder structure. There's other things up here which we'll come to later, which is filtering and finding things and searching. We'll come to that later. Other thing to show you here is a console. You'll learn to hate this. This is where you find all the error messages. It can be useful to give you debug messages to tell you if something's working, but that always needs to be open because it will tell you if something's not working. You get like a little red line in there. Fortunately, at the moment, it's nothing. It will also just print a little display at the bottom here if something's wrong. So the last big error message you get will just print at the bottom. Up here, there's some simple tools you might want to use if you're moving things around. If you want to, rather than using the keyboard. I mean, when I'm selecting something, it brings up the widget here to move things. I like to use the WER keys to change to select, move, rotate, and scale. That's really common in all 3D modeling programs. I'm making an assumption that you'd know something about 3D modeling, that maybe you worked with Vectorworks or Cinema 4D or 3D Max or Maya. So hopefully some of those sort of 3D operations will be normal to you. You have a little gizmo up here that allows you to flip your view, which again is very similar to a lot of people's 3D work. If you've done it before, I've just changed it to ISO mode, which is really unhelpful. So click on that, change it back to perspective. If it looks like that, it's not very good. If you're not familiar with 3D programs, ISO is architecturally correct. Everything's in perfect lines, but it's not how the eye sees. It hasn't got that sort of parallax where things go off into perspective. So we click on perspective and things look a bit more normal. I can't imagine anyone wants to work in ISO mode, but it's there for you if you want it. There's some other tools up here which I'll come to later, which are changing your view and how things look. And in here is all your toolbars with all these different things that we're going to come to as we go through the project. So I'm not going to explain all those things now. The only thing that's really relevant is save, because it's worth explaining at this point that when you save something, you're saving the scene. You're not saving the project. The project's live. As soon as I create an asset in here, so let's say I want to create a script, I'm going to create a C# script. I'm just going to save it as new behavior script. It's not going to do anything at all. That's built. But don't have to save the project. That is now in my folder. Like I can literally, I see just a little bit compiling because it knew it's new. That little green bar that came across. If I go into Show in Explorer, there it is, new behavior script. And if I delete that, it's gone from there. Oh, I want to delete the meta file as well because we don't want that. And when I go in here, it's going to do a little bit of compiling, and it will take it out of my project because it goes, no, that's disappeared from the Windows Explorer folder now. So just to really make the point that everything you do inside Unity, and especially in the project folder, is live. So there's no need to save it. What you're doing is saving anything it changes in here. Unity doesn't crash as often as Unreal, but it does crash occasionally, so you do want to be saving regularly. And of course, save as if you want to create new projects, etc., etc. Build settings and build and run will definitely be coming to at some point, and that's how you actually build out your project. We'll get to that later. So that's enough about the user interface. I think that's enough to get us going. In the next lesson, we're going to start talking about the asset store, which is I really want to get you going really quickly. I want you to find assets, start building and creating your own projects. So we can talk about asset stores and the package manager, so that you can start to create your work really quickly. Okay, see you in the next lesson.